Hello and welcome to what I am tentatively calling Story Time with Ash. I am your host, the lone person at this desk, the lone person on this pod at the moment, Ashton McCauley. If you've never heard of me, that's probably not that surprising. I am an author, but I am firmly in the mid to low list author. I recently had my first traditionally published book. It's called One Night at Cadassi. It is a sci-fi comedy. It's been doing pretty well, but before that, I had several other books that there weren't that many people that heard of them at all. And that's kind of what brought me to this podcast. So I have books that have professional narrators. I have a couple of novellas that have professional narrators, but I also have a lot of stories that just sort of live on my hard drive. And I thought it might be a fun idea to bring some of those stories to an audio/video format, because as I learned on my most recent book tour, one of the hardest things for me is reading my own work. So this is part practice for me so that I get better at reading my own work, doing silly voices, which there will be a lot of voice work in today's episode, and just generally getting more comfortable with it. And then the other thing is, as the stories get off the hard drive, hopefully you like some of them. And I think some of these are really good, but the short story market is pretty difficult right now. And if you're not exactly magazines or periodicals, wherever the hell people publish stories these days, anthologies, if you're not exactly what they're looking for, it can be really hard to break through. So I have a few short stories that have made it in, but the vast majority of them don't. And so I either post them online or, like I said, they sit on my hard drive. So what I'm going to do here is every week I'm going to come in with a new story. Sometimes it might be multiple weeks because some of these are pretty long, and I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to practice. You're going to listen, and hopefully you enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, like and subscribe to the pod on YouTube, Spotify, wherever the hell you're listening. And then if you really enjoy it, you can actually go buy my books anywhere books are sold. You look up Ashton McCauley on Amazon, Bookshop, wherever you can find them. And I'll put some links in the description. But today, I've got a cup of coffee here, nice warm liquid, help warm up my voice. Damn, that's good coffee. I wish they were a sponsor. It's delicious. But we're gonna kick things off with a spooky story, and I put spooky in quotes because I'm not really a spooky writer. I'm more of a humorous writer. So this is spooky subject matter with a humorous bend, and this story is called The Agent. It came about when we were house hunting last year, my wife and I had the thought, what would a realtor do if they were trying to sell a very haunted house? Because in Washington, you don't have to disclose, but in other states, you do, which I think is hilarious because I don't believe in ghosts. But the idea that you have to disclose if you think your house is haunted and that might affect the sale is very funny to me. So this is a story about that. So I'm going to settle in here. I'm going to set some mood lighting, and then I'm going to read The Agent to you, and then I'll talk a little bit about the story at the end. The Agent by Ashton McCauley. Selling houses was no different than any other profession. It took hard work, determination, and the occasional attic-based demon extermination. Mary was very good at selling houses, especially those that did not want to be sold. In her professional career, she was known as the agent sellers called when there was no one else to turn to. Buyers scared off by recent murders on the property? Mary had a full list of clients that considered it a feature. Bullet holes? They saved money on air conditioning. Things that go bump in the night? Now that was where Mary really thrived. It was a sunny afternoon in early autumn when Mary pulled up to 1142 Shady Oaks Drive. The wheels of her perfectly polished Lexus crunched over dead leaves and reflected the sparkling sun. Appearances were everything, and the appearance of her car said, "I'm good at what I do, and what I do is expensive." The house had been on the market 4 times in 4 years with extended periods of vacancy. The buyers, it seemed, couldn't manage to stay in the house for more than a few nights at a time. For other agents, the listing was dead, stricken from all lists and shunned like a domicile-sized leper. Not for Mary. To her, the house represented limitless potential. With the other agents off the scent, she could charge whatever the hell she wanted. She peered out through her tinted windows. From a distance, it seemed like an ordinary house. Mary killed the car's engine and listened to the slow ticking as it cooled. Every house was different, and each told its own story. The chipped blue paint from a rushed exterior makeover said nothing in the world could make this house look like anything other than what it was. Creepy, old, and certainly haunted. There was an old saying about books and covers, but it didn't apply when spirits were concerned. The cover of Shady Oaks said, "Get out," in red letters. It was going to be a long day. Before Mary could open the car door, a woman in an apron came shuffling out the front door straight toward her. Mary reached across the passenger seat, grabbed her day bag, and stepped out. "Hello! Are you the one that's coming to sell the house?" The woman was older, wrinkles lining her body from fingertip to forehead. Her movements were rigid through years of bones slowly fusing together. Mary reached into her bag and looked the woman up and down. She was perfectly normal, other than the slight sheen around her shawled shoulders. This grew stronger as she approached the property line. Mary smiled. Powerful woman. Yes, I'm the one that's come to sell the house. When was it that you lived here? The old woman cocked her head to the side. A little too much. Why, we've been here for the last year. Mary removed her hand from her bag and showed the woman a gold amulet emblazoned with various religious iconography. Yes, I'm sure you did, but when did you own the house? At the sight of the amulet, the woman's face changed, distorting, stretching, and growing sallow. What once might have been confused for age was now clearly displayed as rotten decay. The head tilt became even more pronounced, revealing a long slice running across the edge of the woman's neck. Begone from this place, ye foul! All right, using ye places you in the late 18th, early 19th century, probably a Christian. Mary pushed a dial on the back of the amulet, causing the holy symbols to rotate until a simple cross popped out the top. O Lord, I come before you and ask thee to render all spirits impotent, paralyzed, and ineffective. What are... The woman froze, her limbs shooting out at her sides and mouth clamping shut. Right. Now I assume because you're the welcoming committee, there are more where you came from, so I'm going to be concise. The woman's eyes bulged, growing white with effort, and the edges of her corporeal form shimmered in hazy light. Don't struggle too hard, or you'll disassemble into small pieces of energy, and then, poof! Mary made a small flitting gesture with a free hand. No afterlife, no passing on, just the big black void. The old woman relaxed slightly. Good. Now, before the sellers arrive, I'd like to offer you and anyone inside that house a deal. You pipe down, you get to continue living here. Any of you try shit like this on me when I come inside, and you're getting the big poof. Understand? The woman continued to float, paralyzed. Right. Blink once if you understand, blink twice if I need to finish the prayer. The woman blinked her eyes slowly. Once. There's a good lady. By the power of the Father, I release this spirit. The woman floated back down, hovering less than a centimeter above the ground. Then she blinked a second time. Oh, come on! It was too late. In her hubris, Mary stepped too close to the property line. The spirit grabbed her and yanked her back toward the house. She flew off her feet, talisman dangling from her hand. On instinct, she reached out and grabbed the gold chain, dragging it through the air like a whip. Her body hit the soft lawn with a vicious thud, and the wind went out of her. Mary tried to inhale, feeling nothing but sharp pins where her lungs should have been. Why is it always the old women? As if in answer, the elderly ghost approached, soft slippers hovering above the perfectly manicured grass. You seem to be under the impression that you are in charge, dearie, but it is we who have the power on this land. Mary found her breath and wheezed. Who's we? The old woman chuckled. Glowing eyes peered out at Mary through a basement window, and she heard an unearthly wail from somewhere above. So dramatic. Okay, so what you're saying is I don't need you to negotiate. There will be no... Mary flipped onto her back, pulled the talisman out again, and said, Lord, I come before you. The spirit kicked her in the ribs, sending her tumbling across the lawn. Mary blinked away stars. Usually it took great effort for a spirit to interact with the physical world. However, Shady Lane stood at the intersection of two ley lines, meaning the usual rules of otherworldly physics weren't strictly in play. Mary scrambled to the thin concrete path leading up to the house's front door. She pulled a line of white chalk from her now soiled jacket pocket and drew a clean circle around herself. Unfortunately, the old woman stopped before running into it, putting a damper on what would have otherwise been an easy exorcism. Running full speed into a protection circle was a surefire way to dispel most low-level angry spirits. With the circle safely in place, Mary began again. Lord, I beseech thee to render all spirits impotent. Stop that! Just leave! Screeched the old woman, paralyzed and ineffective in attempting to take revenge against me. The woman's arms shot out once more in paralysis. I will follow you to your grave, she hissed through clenched teeth, and render this old bag back to the energy from which she was created. The woman grimaced, waiting for something to happen. For a moment she just stood there, frozen. Where is your god now? A white light blossomed from her chest, spreading from her center towards her fingertips. In a flash, she was gone, leaving nothing, not even the smallest speck of dust. Mary let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, clicked the cross back into the talisman, and shoved it in her pocket. So much for easy money. On the bright side, the rest of the spirits inside knew exactly what she was capable of. Of course, calling out the divine twice in one day was often met with mixed results, but she was banking on the other spirits not knowing that. If she was going to make the sale, the rest of the day was going to be pure negotiation. Mary smiled and pulled a brush from her day bag. She dusted herself off, removing what dirt she could and getting rid of the last unearthly traces of spiritual combat. There were a few rogue grass stains that would require professional cleaning, but she was otherwise presentable. First impressions were everything, even with the postmortal. The living owners still hadn't arrived, but that left her time to negotiate and discuss with the house's true residents. She stepped out of her protection circle and quickly brushed the chalk away. Then she took a deep breath and walked up to the front door. The stairs to the porch creaked with every step, but there was no foreboding presence. What Mary did feel was the very real presence of eyes on her from every angle. She reached out and turned the brass doorknob. The door swung open on its own accord and chilly air rushed past her. So it's going to be like that. Mary pulled an ornate crystal bottle from her pocket and put a few spritzes on her shoulders. While it looked like perfume, it was actually holy water purchased from a drunk at the local church. Some spirits lacked religious anchoring, but Mary preferred to be safe rather than sorry. She took a deep breath and stepped over the threshold. The balmy summer day disappeared in an instant, replaced with a disorienting chill. She pulled out a small tape recorder. Note, with this property, you almost don't need air conditioning. She smiled. People were always bitching about air conditioning in older homes. This place would sell. The main hallway was short, leading to a darkened set of steps up to the right and a dusty old parlor just on the left. Beyond were the dining room and kitchen. According to the listing, upstairs had 2 bedrooms, a beautiful rooftop balcony, and a clawfoot tub that said, "I like old things." Never mind the fact that clawfoots were notorious for their poor construction and tipping over. It didn't matter. Some tech bro would want it, and he would pay thousands of dollars to make sure there was internet in every room. Tech bros, as a rule, didn't believe in ghosts. Mary started with the downstairs assessment. She turned to her left and entered the parlor. Plush chairs lined the room surrounding a pool table covered in a leather dust jacket. An old painting hung above the fireplace depicting a younger man in a smoking jacket. His eyes were piercing, despite the fading paint. On a hunch, Mary recorded a new voice note. Pool tables aren't selling much these days. Let's take the furniture out of the parlor and turn it into a more of a open-concept chatting space. The pressure change in the room was immediate, as if she had suddenly ascended 1,000 feet straight up. "You will do no such thing!" boomed an ethereal voice. There was the sound of a rope cracking, and a spectral body fell through the ceiling to hang in the middle of the parlor. It was more translucent than the woman had been, so likely a bit older. Older meant closer to passing on and more trouble physically messing with the living. Hanging around after death took energy, and the longer spirits did it, the less powerful they were. Most of the time. "Does that usually send people running?" asked Mary. The hanging corpse looked up at her with confusion and a look of wounded pride. "I am a ghost!" it shouted. "No shit." Mary whipped off a dust cover on one of the chairs and sat down. "Why don't you come down from there and we can chat?" The ghost spun slowly, still imitating what Mary assumed was the exact position it died in. "Look, you're not scaring me, and I've already dispelled one spirit today. I'm guessing you like living here, so let's talk." The man cricked his neck to the side, doing his best to stand straight, and floated to the floor. "You want to talk?" "Yes, I'll record this conversation if that's all right, just for my personal files, nothing else." "No mortal device can record." "Yes, they can. Most people just don't have their settings right. Can we dispense with the all-powerful Ghost Act? It's been a long day and I need a hot bath." Mary could already feel a crick in her own neck from the tussle with the ghost outside. She was getting too old to be dealing with poltergeists. "Also, while we're at it, can we make this a house meeting? I don't want to deal with visions of blood dripping down the walls or whoever drowned in the bath upstairs. None of it's going to make me leave, and I think you'll all want to hear what I have to say." The ghost thought about it for a minute and then huffed. "Fine. Give me a moment." Mary sat in her chair and plucked a few motes of dust off the arms. In addition to the commission, she could make a fortune at an estate sale. The furniture was old. Some looked as though it might have come from the original house. She made a mental note to evaluate the various pieces in the room, careful not to tip her hand to any potential lingering spirits. Ghosts weren't fond of their possessions being sold at auction. Bangs and wails echoed from the second floor, but were quickly silenced. Mary fingered her chalk, wondering if drawing a circle would be prudent or if it would start negotiations on the wrong foot. She settled on unclasping a small music box in her pocket. When it opened, it emitted a song that ghosts couldn't stand. For humans, it was only mildly annoying. It was also the last trick she had in her coat before she'd have to return to the car for reinforcements. No doubt she could exercise every last spirit in the place, but it would be exhausting and ultimately less profitable. Eventually, the hanging ghost returned, falling through the ceiling the same as the first time. A blue-white mist flowed in from the stairwell, filling the space above one of the other armchairs in the parlor. The door to the basement creaked open and slammed shut as black shape with glowing red eyes stalked its way across the boards. Finally, a pair of children, still mostly corporeal dressed in Victorian finery, drifted through the far wall. Wow. Mary made a mental checklist. 1. Non-corporeal glowing entity. Missed. 2. Possible demonic presence. Basement ghost. 3. Fully formed corporeal poltergeist, now double deceased. The old woman out front. 4. Avatar of violent death. The hanging man. 5. Fully formed corporeal multi-entity. The twins. You better have more than wow, said the hanging ghost. Nakundun Karaka! Grated the demonic entity with a timbre that shook the house's old boards, threatening to collapse the whole thing. Sorry. Mary smoothed over any surprise and found her charm. Usually I don't see cohabitation of so many entities in a single space, and it warms my heart. It chilled her to the bone. The demonic entity alone would have made for a full dance card, plus she hated seeing dead kids. They were just creepy. What happened to Grandmama? Asked the twins in unison. Mary did her best not to flinch. I guided Grandmama to an eternal rest beyond this one where she can finally find peace. Technically, it might have been true. No one really knew what happened after someone's spirit was ripped to pieces and scattered to the winds of physics. Mary knew a few people who might be able to work it out, but they were terrible bore at parties and she couldn't be bothered. The twins looked solemn, but didn't ask a follow-up. So you're probably wondering why I've called you all together, said Mary. The house is for sale, said the mist-like entity. Its voice was faint, as if playing over a distant radio losing batteries. Yes, that's correct, and I'm the agent who's going to sell it. Over my dead body, said the hanging man. Really, said Mary. Now, the way I see it, there are two options. We can compromise, or, Mary pulled out the music box, I can turn this on and come back with a proper paranormal team to wipe out any memory of your existence. So much for tact. Mary didn't want to admit it, but the demonic entity scared her, and she suspected any sign of weakness might get her into trouble. Plus, she had a dinner date and would need a shower after the fight in the front yard. Shouted the demonic entity, floating away from the music box. Yes, it is unpleasant when you put it that way. Mary understood none of what the entity said, but the intonation was clear enough. What do you mean, compromise? Asked the hanging man. Well, there's a middle ground between me selling every piece of furniture in this house that belongs in a different century and leaving it exactly as it is. The hanging man shifted. Mary pressed on, knowing every second was an opportunity for the demon to lose it and make a mess. As a realtor, she was responsible for the property's well-being. If the owners returned to find their home a heap of cinders and blood, they'd charge her estate. I'm not your typical realtor. That much is obvious, said the white mist. I specialize in houses with entities that have not moved on to the next life, such as yourselves. To the outside world, I'm an exorcist, removing the problem and making the unsellable sellable again. There was a general grumble at this point, and the demon's eyes glowed like fading coals. But what I do involves a bit more nuance. I'm here to bargain. You all get to continue living here, but in exchange you keep things quiet for a bit. Quiet? Asked the twins. No playtime? Quiet playtime, answered Mary, shuddering at the unison speech. God, she hated dealing with dead kids. They were just as petulant in life, but 10 times as unsettling. Why did they always have to speak in tandem? How long do we have to keep things quiet? Asked the mist. Well, legally it has to be 90 days, but in practice it works better if we keep things normal for at least a year. A year? Asked the hangman. Porkundagan, shouted the demon. The room grew noticeably cooler, which was saying something given the pre-existing frigidity. Mary was ready for this reaction. Listen, it's either this or oblivion. I know that he, she jerked a thumb at the demon, is wondering why he shouldn't just rip me apart or scare me so senseless I end up in a mental asylum. Baktet! He agrees, said the twins. Well, I'm not the only one in this profession, and the others don't bargain. Strictly speaking, that was true, but the only other practitioner within 100 miles was Ventnor, a notorious drunk who preferred gallivanting across the globe in search of monsters. He lacked the tact Mary brought to the table, and most of those that used Ventnor always regretted it in some capacity. They'll come in here with an army of priests and other holy persons until they get the right combination to get you all gone for good. The ghost remained silent. The demon fumed, wisps of black smoke curling off its amorphous body. But it's not all bad news. I'm prepared to offer you the ability to haunt the daylights out of the new owner after that year-long period. Won't they just call you back? Asked the mist. Eventually, yes, but for the first 6 months, I'll be busy. This allows the mystique around the house to grow and means they'll have no other choice but to consult a professional. You might end up with a few run-of-the-mill demonologists, but nothing you can't handle. She flashed a grin toward the demon. Barak tek tek. The creature's voice was gravel pouring over shredded concrete, and yet Mary could tell it was pleased with itself. You can't expect the children to be completely silent for a year, said the hanged man, folding his arms. Mary was prepared for that as well. When the occupants are gone, you can make as much noise as you want. What if they never leave? Mary frowned. She didn't like making concessions, no matter how small. Fine. You can make suspicious noises 2 times a month, but nothing that leads to a direct confrontation with the owners. People can explain a lot, but if they see a floating vase or a figure in the mirror, they will run. The ghost thought it over. Allow us a moment for conference. Perhaps you should wait outside? Asked the hangman. Fair enough, Mary said. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. It most certainly had not. She walked back through the main hallway and out the front door. Warm rays of gleaming afternoon sunlight hit her skin and sent prickles up her arms. She sat on the front stoop and stared out at the other houses on the block. They were a mixture of old and new. Boxy monsters of metal and glass towered over their Victorian counterparts, stripped of every ounce of personality. Despite the haunted nature, Mary preferred the older homes. The summer warmth dropped abruptly as a chill settled over her shoulders. Have you made a decision, then? She stood up and turned around. The hangman was poking halfway through the door. We have. We'll accept your offer, but know this. This house is on a ley line. If you try anything to alter our agreement, we will pass news of your treachery far and wide. Our network knows no bounds. You think we're simple poltergeists, but you're lucky Naguntak didn't rip you into ribbons the second you came in. I calmed him down. You're welcome. Always a pleasure not to be disemboweled. I am nothing if not a woman of my word. The hanging ghost stared at her with piercing eyes. We'll see. Now go away. He receded through the door, leaving Mary alone. She allowed herself the slightest of fist pumps, and then walked back to her car. Pulled out a cell phone and dialed the sellers. Hello, Mary? Sorry, we're running a bit late. Not to worry, your problem is solved. We're gonna sell this house. Really? What about the problem? Mary smiled. Part of my fee is not asking too many questions. I think you'll find the property quite vacant upon your return. My office will be in touch. Thank you. Mary ended the call and stepped into her car. The engine started automatically and a soft song played over the radio. She took a last look at Shady Drive. See you in a few years. And that is The Agent. I had a lot of fun writing that story, and it's funny because I wrote it and then I watched a little program called Ghosts, which if you have not seen the show Ghosts, and I'm not talking about the American version, I'm talking about the British version, it is a hilarious comedy about ghosts cohabitating in a very old house and learning to get along with the new owners. And so I wrote this, and then I watched that, and I was like, shit. Somebody has done this, and they've done it really, really well. So that's why this story has kind of sat on the shelf for a while. But I thought it was a good entry point for this pod because I really like it, and I think it's pretty funny. So if you like it, let me know in the comments on YouTube, Spotify, again, wherever. If you have feedback, look, you can leave it in the comments too. I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to listen to it, but I will at least read it. Another thing too, so as you're listening to this, you might have heard Mary mention a character named Ventnor. She says he's another practitioner that people generally have bad experiences with. Well, Nick Ventnor is actually the subject of my first book, Whiteout. It's a Nick Ventnor adventure. It's right there in the title. Nick Ventnor is a drunken monster hunter that is kind of modeled after, if you've seen the movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves, or The Mummy with, Brendan Fraser as Rick O'Connell, a little bit of Indiana Jones. I kind of took all of those and smashed them together to make this protagonist with an alcoholism issue because, why not? And it's an action adventure comedy kind of in the same vein of, I would actually put it as a comp with the 1999 Mummy with Brendan Fraser. That's my main inspiration for the tone. And it follows him as he goes into the Himalayas searching for the mythical Yeti. And it's a lot of fun. It is my first book, so it's my writing style has changed, I think, a bit since then, but I think it holds up. And right now I'm actually working on getting an audiobook made of this with a professional narrator. His name is Stuart Bentley. He did the prequel, which is called A Man of the Mountain. If you're listening to this on Spotify, you can actually listen to A Man of the Mountain for free in your Spotify membership. It's a novella. It's about 3 hours long, and it tells the story of a man dressing up as Bigfoot and murdering people to keep the myth alive. Believe it or not, that story is a dark comedy. It's about when he gets real monster hunters called on him and the History Channel. It's a great time. Stuart does an amazing job reading it, and I really like it. But that's all I've got for this week. So thank you for listening. If you've made it this far, wow, nice. Please again rate the podcast. Couple of notes I want to put at the end here, and maybe I'll put these up front next time. You'll notice that the cover art for each of these episodes is, I mean, maybe you won't notice, but it is AI generated. And my thought is this: I'm not making any money off this podcast. And if I ever do start to make money off this podcast, it'll be way down the line. But if I do, I will make a commitment right now that the first thing I will put that money towards is getting an artist that can do cover art for each of these episodes. But as long as I'm not making any money on it, I can't afford to do an actual artist for every episode. And my art is dog shit. I'm working on that too, but it's not good enough for cover art for this. So I'll be having AI generated images for every episode card from now until the point when I make enough money to not do that. I respect artists, and AI is it's in a very weird spot. But again, not making any money off it. That's probably said enough about that. Thank you so much for listening. I will be back in a week with a brand new short story. I don't know which one it's going to be, but I'll tell you this: there are hundreds on my hard drive, and it'll be a fun time. So thank you for listening.